Chapter 36. Oh, is this the beginning? I searched my memory. Right, it seems to have been around this time in my previous life. Belsac started to enter the imperial palace in earnest as a playmate of the first prince. In fact, it starts because Astana and Belsac were not so close. Astana regards Belsac as an annoying, trembling thing, but there is no real friendship. It was quite a political intention. Aren't you nervous? Belsac said, shouting at me and my cousins at the table. No, I don't envy anything. Why would I be envious of playing with that guy who is not kind and has a dirty personality? He was act mischievous to Tia as well. The twins replied in a deep tone. Perhaps the two are sincere. It's funny for Lombardi's children. First Prince was not such an attractive object of play. But would other noble families do the same? Huh, lie. Everyone was envious. Perhaps he had already boasted in several social gatherings, and that's what Vis and Serral wanted. Of course, it wasn't just to groan in front of people. Rather, it was to show that the relationship between the first prince, that is, the empress and the Vis couple, was so close. So have you, Belsac said, pointing me with a pointed fork. Wouldn't it be better to listen to me well in the future? Be as docile as before. What did you say, that idiot? Anyway, I am not envious of any acquaintances with the first prince, who will be brought down by the hands of second prince and sent to the battlefield. However, I hated seeing Belsac's elated appearance, who had no idea of such future. I quietly buttered the bread without responding. Plenty, very meticulously, and lifted it. Flinch, and Belsac, who was looking at me, flinched, but I brought the buttered bread into my mouth as if to behold Belsac and asked. It is only then that Belsac's face, who has grasped the situation, turns red. I deliberately spoke out loud, licking the crumbs on my mouth with my tongue. Chewy. You can hear twins squeaking from each side. It's a bonus that Astalia's cry for Belsac is a bit disappointing. Oh my gosh. At that time, the door of Eleanor Hall opened and I saw Grandpa entering. The grandfather glanced at his grandchildren and granddaughters sitting around and walked straight to the big table. The adults who were sitting stood up and greeted the grandfather. The family banquet was just beginning. I quietly shut my mouth and listened to the conversation coming from the big table. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It feels good to see everyone gathered like this, Lulek said with satisfaction as he watched the children and their spouses seated around him. Lombardy was on the good side with the current lord, just as proving that blood and flesh are of no use in the face of power compared to the unfolding of situations that other families can't even open their eyes to. At least, the brothers haven't poked swords into each other yet, and it was a disproving that Lulak still exists. If the time comes when Lord is weak and the vassals have to think about the next generation, then it will be difficult for everyone to sit around the table like this anymore, especially for those who will become the next Lord of Lombardy, and of course, Lulak himself too. Get some food, Lulak ordered the butler. After a while, more servants raised several silver trays. Wow, it's amazing. At the back of the procession, the children lit their eyes when they saw the two male servants whine and come in. It was big roast pork with a red apple in its mouth. The banquet hall was already filled with an appetite odor, and the man dressed in clean clothes came in last. He was the chef in charge of Lord. For reference, Emperor Jovaine's chef was his disciple. The chef, who politely greeted Lulak, took his own knife and cut the grilled pigs to eat. I could see the chef's dedication to the house, how careful his hands were on each dish. A plate was placed in front of the people, and the meal began in a rather free atmosphere. Then, with a bottle of wine, V stood up and approached Lulak. I will serve a drink, father. Lulak nodded satisfactorily and took the drink of the eldest son. V said as if everyone was asking for a listen. Thank you for allowing Balzac to enter the imperial palace. It was Vestian who responded first to those words. I guess it went well, brother-in-law. It is thanks to my father. Vis, quite resolutely, turned everything to Lulak's eyes. Without permission, Balzac would have had to wait months before he was 11. Vis was bitter, and he had a good relationship with Vestian. It was also because Vestian was very good to everyone. Of course, there was a band between the two. Lulak watched the conversation go back and forth, silently holding a red wine to his mouth. How glad your father made an exception for us, Balzac. Sarah laughed, giving strength to the word exception. Lombardy's children are not free to act outside the mansion until they are 11 years old. However, it meant that Balzac was treated especially so that he could go to the imperial palace. It's even an exception, Shannonette said quietly, but coldly. At the same time, Sarah's long eyelashes trembled. However, he did not rebuttal. None of Lulak's children, the 4 siblings, can fight against Shannonette. It was the same with their spouses. In the cold atmosphere, Vestian smiled and patted Shannonet's hand. Shannonette was the most steely to her brothers, but only to her husband. She showed a particular weak appearance. Even now, she could just erase the cold expression and laughing at pretending to be unable to win and continuing to eat. There is no such thing to be so loud. Finally, Lulak opened his mouth. If there is a good reason, there is no reason why you cannot travel outside the mansion before you are old. Besides, you cannot ignore the Empress' letter. A subtle smile spread to Cyril's hardened face. Please make sure that Balzac does not make mistakes in the Imperial Palace. Yes, father, Vise replied with a smile. With this gathering and eating, the food seems to be more delicious today. Isn't that right, father? Vestian released the atmosphere with a unique soft smile. Yes, it is. It would be nice to gather like this often in the future. Oh, is it difficult because of the youngest brother-in-law? Haha. Galyahan, who had been eating quietly on one side, opened his eyes round when he was mentioned. You mean me? I can't see the face of the youngest brother-in-law these days. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm busy with work, Galyahan said, bowing his head. What's happening? What do you say, you? Vise laughed, and Cyril rebuked her as her husband. However, that did not mean that the smile that quietly disappeared from Cyril's face was not erased. It was noisy about opening a store this time. But what on earth are you doing? Vise asked Galyahan as if they were blaspheming. It was a mockery enough to make other people listening, but Galyahan replied calmly. That's exactly what you said. I'm trying to open a small shop. Without family support? Yes, I'm going to do it this time, on my own. Galyahan replied, saying thanks to the butler for filling his cup. So, is it to be put on the Helslot market? A small sound of laughter flowed from Vise's words. Cyril, Laurels, and Vestian shed it. I can carry my face because of you, who have been proud of these days. If I try to open a store, I'll be taking a seat in Sidakuna. It's a Helslot market. Ho ho ho. If you don't have enough money, would we lend you some money? Laurels asked, like an older brother who thought of his younger brother. It is not that I am running out of funds. Fine, brother. However, when everyone looked at his smiling face, it was not an atmosphere to believe Galyahan's words. Cyril put a horse here. If you need a place to open a store in Sedakuna, shall I talk to my family? If you need help, please feel free to tell me, Galyahan. It's really okay. However, Cyril exchanged eyes with Laurel's wife, Ronet. It seemed that women had already shared this story with each other. I can easily guess the contents, and Galyahan laughed bitterly. I have Lombardi's pride. It's a business for the common people. This condemned Galyahan. In the meantime, people even going to say, isn't it very much that I drive you out of the house? I didn't know that. There's no way a guy who doesn't even light a nose of a social event knows. Ah, even if there's no place to invite you, sometimes you should show your face. At first glance, it seemed like Vise worried about his younger brother, but in the end, it was only words that looked down on Galyahan and raised herself, who was popular at social events. It would be better to think about making money from the business for the common people once again, Galyahan. Vise said, dragging his tongue for the last time. It was an attitude that completely ignored Galyahan. Galyahan also has a way to get angry with Vise. He just sat down and paired drinks with a strange face. Vise and Laurels laughed, thinking it was because Galyahan had nothing to refute. It was then Lulak, who had been dipping his mouth with a white napkin, threw out a word to see if he had finished eating. I'll watch, Galyahan. Galyahan was also surprised this time. He stopped putting the cup down and stopped. At the same time, Vise's face was distorted. Depending on how he interpreted it, it could be taken in a completely different meaning. But Vise looked at his father with glowing eyes as if it were just breathing fire. Doesn't it sound like you're looking forward to Galyahan? He was even feeling a sense of betrayal from his father, who had never shown such a figure to himself. Galyahan looked at Lulak for a moment and answered in a calm voice. Yes, father, I will try my best. After that, the conversation started again at the initiative of Vestian, but they were only meaningless words. Vise couldn't hide her displeasure and drank alcohol, and Galyahan only sat with a thoughtful face from time to time. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I wasn't the only one listening to the adults' words coming and going at the table. At the words of disregard from my father, the twins were restless as they looked at my face next to him, and Balzac was busy giggling with Astalio sitting next to him. Tia, are you okay? Lorraine, who was taking care of Astalio's younger brother, Vicky, looked at me and asked anxiously, What? No, that's... Lorraine carefully reduced his words. I don't mind. Oh, it's delicious. I have to ask for more, I said when I cooked the brown lean meat. But really, I didn't mind. No, I was rather excited. I hoped the time passes quickly, so after my father's store opened, I was very curious about what kind of face those people would look like. Cook. A little evil laugh came from my mouth. End of chapter 36. Chapter 37. These days, the Haslot market has one new thing. It was a large green building built on the central street of Haslot. That expensive green dye was spread across a large building. A small four-story building that was originally renovated from an old building on its site boasted a luxurious appearance that did not match the market a little. So among the people who used the market, there was a lot of talk about the purpose of the building. Some said the building would be a luxury pub. Others said it would be a luxury inn. What the opinion said in common was that they all expected it to be a place selling very expensive items. And finally, a big sign hung on the building. Galyahan Clothing Store. People who were busy walking down the street would slow down while looking at the signboard one by one. The signboards, written in handwriting as luxurious as the exterior of the building, seemed to suit the Nobles District, said Acuna Street. A clothing store? Hansen, who owns a large fruit shop nearby, muttered while looking up at the shiny sign. Isn't the wrong dressing room? Robert, who runs a bread shop next to Hansen's shop, came up and said, Okay, if it's a dressing room, it's a dressing room. I've never heard of a clothing store again. What do I know? Robert grunted, disliked by the shimmery buildings towering among the shabby buildings. By the way, are you going to use all that big building as a dressing room? Margaret, a crockery shop right next to the clothing store building, asked as he joined the men's conversation. I will make this big dressing room inside Acuna. Someone built in Heslop Market. Others agreed with Hansen's words, but even so, they couldn't take their eyes off the dark green building. It was then the door of a closed clothing store opened and the young woman greeted the merchants with a smiling face. Hello. She wasn't overly decorated, but she was a woman with an appearance that made people who see it invisible and couldn't take eyes off her eyes. I am Violet, the manager of the Galyahan clothing store. I'll be happy in the future. Originally, she is a middle manager of the textile department at the top of Lombardy. She was now scouted by Clarivan and transferred to the group. Dealing with all sorts of textile dealers from all over the empire, dealing with her stubbornness was as familiar as breathing. At Violet's fresh greeting, the merchants nodded and shouted. And Felicia, the hostess of the bakery, couldn't stand the worries and asked Violet, A clothing store is like a luxury dressing room? We are a little different from a dressing room. Think of it as a place selling pre-made clothes, the clothes you made in advance. People were confused as they looked at each other's faces alternately. Familiar with the reaction, Violet said with a smile, The store opens in 2 days. Come see it once. You will be able to buy clothes for less than 2 silvers. 2 silver. The people who flashed their eyes a couple of times at her words burst into laughter at once. Yes, man, young people are good at joking. How can a suit sold in a place like this be 2 silver? No matter how cheap you go to the dressing room, you have to pay 50 silver. I have to give 1 silver only to remove the fabric these days. But Violet spoke seriously. Really, look at the day we open our store, but do you have to come quickly? What? Because things will run out quickly. The people who laughed, holding the belly button at her sincere attitude, stopped laughing one by one. Really? Yes, of course. However, people still looked dubious. Violet shrugs with a heart that everyone will know when the open day comes. And she didn't forget to ask for it once again. Don't forget to spread the word around. The opening of our Galleon's clothing store is 2 days later. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Today was a day of class. And one more thing, it was also the day when a clothing store named after my father was opened in Haslett Market. Not only my father, who was nervous and couldn't sleep all night, but I also went out early in the morning and had a simple breakfast by myself, and I headed to the classroom a little earlier. Because of Clarivan's schedule, there was a message that the class was a little faster. Maybe in the afternoon I'm going to go to the dressing room to check the situation. The door of the classroom was opened after passing the familiar path. Even though I didn't know about the twins or Balzac, the classroom was empty, where I always thought there would be Lorraine, who came first to read the book. Am I the first? It's rare. I settled down in the classroom without much doubt. It was the place where I always sat with the twins. But I heard the door of the classroom open again. Hi, sir. I laughed wide at Clarivan. It was a business smile. When I laughed like this, it was Clarivan who always smiled at me. But today something is different. He smiles like a habit, but his hardened eyes look at me. Teacher, what's going on? Clarivan approached where I was sitting, took a small jar from his arms, and put it down in front of me. Did you know this product that is selling on fire these days as Lombardy's business? I didn't know how to answer. It was because I made a conversation with my grandfather about the recommendation letter. Besides, I heard that my grandfather collected Lombardy's vessel and even proudly boasted of it as my work. So it's okay to answer. I know well. But it made me hesitate that I couldn't understand the intent of Clarivan's question. Instead of answering, I looked at him for a moment. Clarivan's eyes, whose pigment was close to light blue, faced my gaze in front of me. If so, let me tell you what I think. Clarivan said in a low voice. Other families don't believe the fact that Lord said in the last meeting he held that this ointment was made by a Lady Florentia. Not at the level of pride of an ordinary granddaughter. I think I understood the will of the Lord as much as I gave it. In fact, that's normal. I am only 8 years old now. But I know you well too. Perhaps the idea and method of creating this ointment was something you came up with. Istira just added technical awareness, isn't it? No, I just really helped Istira. First of all, I tried to pretend I didn't know, but as expected, it doesn't work for Clarivan. Then are you saying that Istira invented the ointment? Yes, all that matters is Istira. She doesn't just sell medicine, but put it in beeswax and vegetable oil to harden it. It's also mixed with HC. Because Istira is smart. Of course, I know that Istira has a brilliant head, but she, not the one who thinks out of the box. No, when did you figure out about Istira like that? Clarivan seemed to be convinced already. The ointment was not made by Istira, but by my own initiative. In fact, I have been noticing it for a while, the day he had a meeting with my father over the price of ready-to-wear clothes. Clarivan clearly knew that this ready-to-wear business was a business for commoners, customers. At that time, it would have been to show his intentions that he suddenly raised the price higher. It was already a little while later that I felt uncomfortable in Clarivan's attitude. But there wasn't much to say after that, so I thought maybe it was my mistake and went over. Being raised in this way, I asked with a bloody smile. It's only said to me that today's class has been pulled, right? Then Clarivan responded by raising the tail of his mouth as well. Yes, others were told that today's class was cancelled. I did it because I thought I needed time to talk to you. Please forgive me. You didn't have to do that. If you just asked, I would have answered. Just like Clarivan did, I was just trying to think of him, not to take it to the end. It was a little bit more than I had planned, but it was going to happen one day. It's Clarivan Pellet, after all. It was rather welcoming that a commercial genius, who I had to make him my own people at all costs, came to me with curiosity. If so, please tell me the truth. Clarivan said in a sincere voice. At that moment, I could see, if I don't properly answer Clarivan's questions right now, I'm not going to get this genius cooperation no matter what the future. I put my back straight to get my posture right. First of all, the teacher's guess is correct. I made the ointment with Istira's help. Also, Clarivan's eyes looking at me twinkled. Then, is Kalyan's project also the idea of a young lady? No, that's not it. My father came up with making and selling ready-to-wear clothes. That's right, you can call it that way. Oh, right. In this place, where there is no concept of pre-made clothes, of course, there is no word for ready-to-wear clothes. Clarivan nodded as he looked at me with a face that seemed to be impressed. I knew when he said, I have to lower the price. I mean, you're the one who goes beyond what I expected to do with my lady. It was then, too. I can't forget Clarivan's face, who laughed brightly. It's even more handsome. Actually, since the time of Koroy Cotton business, I have had a feeling. Well, from then on, a stream of sweat flows. How sharp is this man? At that time, the reason why the business right was transferred from Greece to Galyahan was because of the lady. More precisely, it was because the lady suddenly dragged Galyahan to the front of the wagon. My face turned slightly red with embarrassment. Clarivan has been aware of it to some extent since then. I feel hot when I pretended I didn't know anything. At that time, it was important to open the door to my father. I understand that heart. Galyahan is a valuable talent to read only books. After all, Clarivan has eyes to see. It's the first time he ever praised my father in front of me, so I feel better. Because it's already like this, I want to see him join my father's business in my name in the future. But don't push too hard. Clarivan was a talent that you should never miss. Is my grandfather's talent collection wall inherited from me? I wanted to make Clarivan my own, even at that moment, so I said, barely calming my simmering heart. Anyway, please pretend you don't know. I will try not to bother you. I was speaking politely to suit Clarivan's whims as much as possible. Once I had successfully told Clarivan that I was an extraordinary child, it was decided that it was about this point. And in the future, I was hoping to show better and better appearances, build trust, and make Clarivan my person. But even before I finished speaking, Clarivan's face is grim and his sound hardens as if it were flying. Teacher? Why? Clarivan was disappointed with me. Yeah? Am I still lacking? What does that mean? I asked if the ability of this Clarivan pellet wasn't in your eyes. No way! Whatever you are going to do in the future. Apart from raising the top of the pellets, Clarivan's achievements were beyond description. In particular, after he became in charge, the chart at the top of Lombardy rose by drawing an almost straight line. At least in commerce, no one can follow Clarivan's animalistic sense. Clarivan, who was looking at me, bites the lower lip slightly, as if he was resentful. And he said to me in slightly trembling voice, please don't throw me away. Oh, end of chapter 37. Chapter 38. Clarivan's round face looked as if he had received a breakup notification. Sir, if I was not enough to support you, I'll do my best. Learn more and gain more experience, so please reconsider. He is the same person in the past, but this was so different from the Clarivan I know. Clarivan did not break his pride in front of anyone. Even in front of my grandfather, he always maintained a stiff attitude that he thought would be okay. Honestly, I'm embarrassed. I couldn't believe it, so I asked as if to confirm. So you're saying you're going to help me? No, I'm asking you to allow me to help you. Why? My heart came out without my knowledge. Have I ever done anything big enough for Clarivan to come out like this? No. Rather, it moved quietly and quietly, whether people noticed or I attracted attention. But why does the Clarivan pellet look like this? Clarivan looked at me, muttering blankly with a grimace, and replied, "Because I saw the possibility in the lady." "If it's possible, you mean the possibility that I'll be a smart adult later on?" "No." Clarivan shook his head. "The possibility to save this Lombardy." It felt like I was stabbed. In the future, I am running with the pledge to save this beautiful family that Vise is going to eat like a family member. I have never spoken that thought out to anyone. I barely took care of my facial expressions and then came back with an innocent face and asked again, "You are saying that our family is dying right now?" At my question, Clarivan was ill and corrected his words. Not yet, because the Lord is firmly seated, but..." Clarivan, trying to explain something long, suddenly shortened her words and stared at me. Then he said with a little bleak smile, "You're testing me again, lady." And he said to me in a tone that seemed to have no doubt, "Don't you already know, even my lady?" Clarivan laughs quietly. "Oh, I'm not fooling him again." I had no choice but to shrug once. "You are saying that Vice Lombardi should not be the next lord." Instead of deliberately saying that he was uncle, I called the name Vice. Anyway, except for Shananet, I didn't feel the kind of blood relationship with my father's brothers, so this was comfortable. Clarivan didn't seem to care about that at all. Rather, he was delighted to see what I was saying. "You must be the future of Lombardy, my lady." "What is the reason?" "That's it, of course. Vice Lombardi is not suitable to be next lord." "No, not that one." I cut off Clarivan's horseback. "According to the teacher's words, it would be much better for me to take over the position of lord when I grow up than for Vice to become lord. That's not what I'm curious about." I smiled like a habit. "I'm asking why you believe in me and stay by my side." That's for the first time. Clarivan showed hesitation. I did not rush. I just sat down and waited for Clarivan to clear up his thoughts. "I'm originally from Dillard's family." It was the first words from a carefully opened mouth. "My father is Romasi Dillard, who is currently in charge of Top Lombardy." I knew it from my previous life. However, only very few people really knew this. So it was all about the other families who had a deep connection to Lombardy. Romasi Dillard never officially admitted that there was an outside marriage child, and the Clarivan did not say that he was the Romasi sons. He was helping my grandfather with the job, and he only got to know it by accident. Even then, my grandfather forced him to hold back. Even though he knew that I wasn't the one who will tell the story to others, I asked him several times. To that extent, the fact that he was an extramarital child raised in a shadow was a huge scar that could not be erased by his great pride. But he was telling me his secret right now. When I grew up, my father wanted me to leave Lombardy, to live independently. He will give me enough support, so he encourages me to become a bureaucrat in the imperial palace or go to other areas to make a living. That is the reason. Clarivan's blue eyes looked straight at me. "Because my loyalty to this Lombardy is great, more than anyone else in the Dillard family." Then he added words like self-excuse. "That doesn't mean that I have any regrets in Dillard's family. I also wanted to get out of the Dillard family and build my own territory. And I just want to contribute to Lombardy in my own way." "But," Clarivan said, frowning his straight eyebrows, seeing what he really hated. "It's true, my respect for the Lord, but he's really bad about growing his children. I have no choice but to admit it. The buds of his 3 sons are almost annihilated, and Shananet, who can see the buds of Lord, is a daughter, especially in the case of Viz, who pretends that he was already decided to be the next Lord. Is his head filled with poop instead of brain?" Clarivan, who was pouring out harsh words, noticed me and quickly turned away. So I was discouraged about whether I could work for Lombardy until Lord was alive. I was in charge of education because I wanted to, but the result is still the same. "Then I see you," Clarivan said seriously as he looked at me with his eyes dripping because he couldn't contain so much affection. "I haven't achieved anything like this yet, but I am confident that no one will lose my loyalty to this Lombardy at least." Honestly, it's a little surprising. Clarivan, who was always ice cold, had such a passion for the Lombardy family. That is why, as soon as he became in charge of the top of Lombardy, he would have grown up the top like he was waiting for it. And although it's a bit strange, the appearance of me from the past kept overlapping with the appearance of Clarivan. He is doing his best with love for Lombardy, knowing that he will not be properly recognized because of his natural origin. I finally made up my mind and opened my mouth. "The reason the teacher hasn't achieved anything so far is that you haven't been given an opportunity." When I said that he had been listening to it, Clarivan opened his eyes in a circle. "But now it's different. Even though the beginning is just a clothing store, you know well how big a move my father's business will be, right? Then why the ladies and Callahan to me? I was expecting that the two of you would become a good partner. I could do something to my father and the teacher at once." "Okay," Clarivan shed a little groan. I asked Clarivan again and again, "Can you handle it?" Clarivan Pellet even shows his wounds and wants to be my person, that I have no reason to push him away. "No, you shouldn't be crazy. For me, who is still young and has no access outside the mansion, Clarivan will be my eyes, my mouth, and my feet. It will also be my mask until I am an adult. It may be a little difficult to follow my future plan." Clarivan's blue eyes shook like an earthquake, and above all, I finally asked the most important thing. Can you keep the secret? Until I'm ready, no one should know what I'm doing. As long as possible, I should simply remain the granddaughter of the slightly smarter, so that Beast doesn't feel a serious sense of crisis. When I realized it at time that I could be in front of him in everything, I would take place in the next Lord position. And I saw the smile that brightened up as bright as the last time he tied the ribbon on my sleeves appeared on Clarivan's face. Please take care of me from now on, Clarivan. At the change of his title, Clarivan shakes his shoulder once and then carefully kisses the back of my hand. I will believe and follow my lady. There was no need for grand promises or oaths. Trust me and follow me. Just one word was enough. Now that the conversation was over, I stood up as I moved. Clarivan quickly stood up, shaking off the slightly crumpled skirt. I said to Clarivan, please tell my grandfather sooner or later. You want to give me in-depth education. In-depth education? It's like, am I a girl? It is a face that seems to ask. I can't have a secret conversation with Clarivan forever. There will be more and more things to discuss in the future. It's a lot too. If necessary, tell me that you're going to conduct one-on-one classes on an irregular basis. Maybe my grandfather won't be against it. Rather, I was happy and said, ha ha ha, and laughed. I walked toward the doorway, leaving Clarivan standing in the dark. As I opened the door, I saw two employees walking this way from a distance. I turned and shouted out loud, so they could hear it. Then goodbye, sir. I even said hello to my belly button. Then Clarivan came to his senses, saying hello. Please go carefully, Laurentia. I smiled wider once more to do well and started walking. Even I could see my footsteps were bouncing. I was humming even to the hum. Good. I got Clarivan much faster than expected. What should I do now? With Clarivan in my head, I was busy making a list of things to do in my father's business or at the top of Lombardy. Asterisk. What the hell is this about? The owner of the bread shop, Robert, was frustrated and looked at the people lined up in a long line in front of the Galliahan clothing store. The long line that started right in front of the doorway crossed the pottery shop next to it and stretched to the shop next to it too. All of the people in the line were women, but looking at the inside of the store all the time he felt nervous. Now we have prepared plenty of quantities, so please be patient and wait. The woman who introduced herself last time as Violet shouted loudly with her palms rounded together. However, as more items were held in the hands of people coming out of the store, the faces of those who had waited became increasingly sad. At that time, a man ran out of the hectic store. Manager! The man with reddish-brown hair and pale white skin glanced at the people in the line, then immediately approached Violet and said a small word. I think we should set a limit per person. As it is, it will be less than an hour, so I think the number of supplies I prepared will run out. Yes, I can't help it. Do it. I expected it to be popular, but it was such an explosive reaction. She didn't know that she had to limit the number of clothes that people could buy because she didn't have enough clothes to sell. Violet was running around without knowing that it was a difficult day, and she didn't know that the smiles of laughter would fall on the faces of the store employees. She took a deep breath, then exhaled, and again gathered her hands in a circle and shouted out loud so that the person at the end of the line could hear it. To ensure that the purchase opportunity goes back to as many people as possible, you can only purchase up to 2 sets per person. Please understand, 2 sets per person. Those who were greedy for her words complained, but the people behind the line were very happy. However, despite the efforts of the employees in the end, the clothing store had to close early, long before the closing time on an opening day, and the popularity of the clothing store only got higher and higher without knowing that it would cool down the next day and the next day. End of chapter 38. Chapter 39. 2 weeks have passed since my father's Galliahan clothing store opened. As a result, the ready-to-wear business was a big hit. Even today, before the opening hours every day, all of the supplies were sold out and they were closing early, and the word ready clothes was spreading more and more throughout the Lombro Empire as synonymous with Galliahan clothing stores. It was impossible to meet the demand with the crowds of people, so some time ago, additional weavers and tailors had to be hired, 3 times the number of those who first hired. And now he was trying to find a suitable location to make a branch. Many were amazed at the introduction of the new concept of ready-to-wear and the prices of cheap clothes. But what was most surprised by the success of this project was the people inside the Lombardi family. The people of the family, who thought my father, who had a low presence considered as a timid youngest, who just liked to read books, were surprised and half turned upside down. Some of the vassals said, "Is that Galliahan the one I know?" To that extent, my father's position was very different from 2 weeks ago. Even today, the mansion was noisy from the morning because of my father. It was not a place where everyone had to attend unconditionally, like the last banquet, but it was an autonomous gathering for breakfast. Over the weekend, the family of Laurels, who stayed in Genevois Street, his wife's family, and Vestian, who had been to work from early morning, gathered together. I sat next to my father, ate fruit with a fork, and appreciated the face of the people sitting around the table. Grandfather laughed happily as he watched the servants busily walking in and out of the room. Haha, it looks good, isn't it, Shananet? Yes, father. The employees are also very fond of it. That ready-to-wear is a very convenient thing, Galyahan. Within a few days after my father's clothing store opened and the boom hit, a large number of orders came in to buy several hundred pieces of the same type of clothes at once. It was the Lombardi family. They picked ready-to-wear clothes from Galyahan clothing stores as uniforms for employees working inside the mansion. With that order, grandfather quickly became a VIP of the clothing store, and today was the day the clothes were ordered were distributed to the servants. Overall, the uniform, red or dark burgundy, was a dress that women could wear with their tops freely, while men could wear pants and vests with autonomous shirts as well. Originally, a clothing store that only sold women's clothing had to make a pattern for men's clothing because of this order, but it was a large order to cover the cost. Thank you for the compliment, father. My father nodded with slightly embarrassed face. And it is this change that I like the most among them. How did you come up with such an ingenious idea, Galyahan? Grandpa said to my father with a happy face. As the praise continues, V's face hardens more and more. I pretend to be calm, but the sporadic swelling under my eyes seemed to be boiling inside. Oh, it's fun. When the interest of the family and the empire turned to my father, Viz couldn't stand it. I had to pinch my thighs in order not to laugh too hard while staring at such a figure of Viz. John, Grandpa called the butler who was waiting next to him. Yes, Lord. What did the servant say? Did you like it, as Shananet said? Everyone is very grateful that they don't have to worry about their clothes anymore. Yes, good, good. The grandfather nodded and said that he was very satisfied. If you have a problem with your clothes or need extra clothes, make sure to buy new clothes at all times. Is it possible, Galyahan? Yes. If John contacts the clothing store, we will arrange for delivery to the mansion at any time. The butler seemed a little surprised by my grandfather's words, then bowed deeply with a smile. It was an expression of gratitude and respect. Okay, and Galyahan. Yes, father, you did very well. That was only one word, a word of praise from the father to his son, as if tossing it. But the repercussions were great. The actions of the people around the table stopped for a moment, and the deacon John also stared at my father. Grandpa also hurriedly continued eating while coughing, as if feeling the reaction around him. Thank you, father. I wondered if my father was surprised for a moment, and then replied in a small voice. At that time, Sarah said that she seemed to intervene with an exaggerated tone of voice. Now, in a few days, it's the day that Belsac visits the first prince, father. His intention to divert the subject of the conversation from my father to his son, Belsac, was abundant. What kind of gift should I bring? She wasn't really asking for advice. In a word, she was asking for a suitable one of the family's items. Shananet, who couldn't know the insider's meaning, said, frowning at her fair eye, wouldn't it be necessary for young children to meet for a while and bring a present to their play? It's not just another noble child, but it's the first prince who will become the crown prince in the future. This is the first visit. You have to bring a present. If so, choose a gift that suits your circumstances and go. But sister, Cyril, Shannonet's strict attitude made Cyril cry. Then he looked at grandfather as if asking for help. Take the key from John the day before your visit and go. The term storehouse the grandfather refers to is a safe located deep inside the mansion. It is full of all kinds of treasures that Lombardy has owned for hundreds of years, which I haven't even seen in a few times. It's a space with a total of 3 stories underground, and inside it is huge enough to get lost if you make a mistake. In other words, when the grandfather said, "Take the key," he said to freely choose and present it to the prince. It was needless to say that Cyril's face became bright as if it had just lit up. Shannonet seemed dissatisfied with grandfather's decision, but no longer vomited. "Thank you, father," Cyril laughed as he stroked Belsac's head sitting next to him. Even then, her face seemed to be relieved a little. Belsac was greedy with bacon, not knowing what the grown-ups were talking about. After looking at Belsac for a long time, I accidentally made eye contact with my grandfather. Then the hardened grandfather's eye were relieved. After all, my grandfather likes me. I chewed the deaf food in front of me as if I knew nothing. Haha, it would be nice to just see the delicious stuff in the grandfather's mouth and in the granddaughter's mouth. "John, give me the keys." "Key? Are you referring to warehouse key?" Maybe Cyril thought like me, and I could see she fixed her dress and getting a key. Huh? But what the butler handed to my grandfather wasn't the warehouse key. I knew. And my grandfather called me. "Tia, come here." "Me?" Anyway, when he called, I walked in front of my grandfather. My grandfather gently stroked my cheek with the back of his hand and held a slightly larger key in my hand. "It's the key to the library that I had previously decided to give as a gift for your birthday." "Library?" I forgot. As a birthday present, my grandfather told me how How about the library? And that's great, but I told him to ask for a request later. So I thought my birthday gift ended with it. I need to use the favor soon. Couldn't it be replaced by this one? I got nervous, so I quickly asked, Grandpa, but I got something else. You take this too. This grandfather gives you because you like the book. Besides, don't you need a suitable place to have an in-depth class with Clarivan? In-depth class? Chananet asked, looking at me and my grandfather alternately. Haha, yes, a while ago, Clarivan came and said, Our Florentia is so smart that she is ready for more difficult classes. That's great. Chananet stroked my head, rejoicing like his job. This library is only for you to use, so read a lot and learn a lot. Florentia. Thank you. I love it, Grandpa. I'm on purpose. I screamed and hugged my grandfather's neck. This girl, hehehe. My grandfather seemed a little surprised, but soon patted me on my back and enjoyed the cuteness of his granddaughter. It was truly a gift I received at the perfect timing. I held the key tightly in both hands, hugged it against my chest, and shouted out loud. I will learn a lot from the library. That was given to me as a gift, so I'll quickly become a great person. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After having breakfast and seeing my father off at the front door, I hurriedly grabbed the library keys and moved. When I first heard where the library was, I had to tilt my head. It's near my grandfather's office. Yes, young lady, you can go there. It was a gift to me, so I thought maybe it would be around the place where my father and I were staying. Why are there? I do not know. It was decided by the Lord. Well, the gift is the heart of the giver. Excitingly, I headed to the floor where the grandfather's office was located. My library was across 2 rooms from my grandfather's office, and the moment I arrived, I could see why my library was set up near the office. Are you here, Miss Florentia? Lombardi's knight, who was guarding my grandfather's office, looked at me and pretended to know me. Probably the security personnel guarding the office seemed to be restricting access to my library as well. As my grandfather said, this library is a space that can only be used by me. I nodded politely, then carefully inserted the key into the door and turned it. Sweet, the door opened with a small crackling sound. It was a small space compared to the public library that everyone in the mansion could use, but there were quite a few books at a glance. Except for the window, all 3 walls were filled with books, so it was quite cozy. I closed the door behind my back and stepped step by step and stood in front of the window. I miss you. I slowly swept the wall by the window. Also, I looked around inside the library. We meet again like this. It was very scary that it was a coincidence. This room, which is now my own library, was my office in my previous life when I helped my grandfather to do office work. I whispered a little while looking at the inside, which was a little different from the memory, but still comforting. I'll be happy again this time. At that time, I heard a small knock. Come in. The door opened to my answer and Clarivan came in. I have received a message, young lady. Before coming here, I moved to the place of the in-depth class through a butler. Clarivan had a thick book on one side as if he had really come to teach me. The thoroughness of caring for other people's eyes was so clear that I said with a smile, Then shall we start class, sir? End of chapter 39. Chapter 40. Empress Palace of the Lumbru Empire. Even within the Imperial Palace, the most splendid space was slowly starting the day until midday is over. This was a normal thing because the Empress, who usually cannot fall asleep easily, used to fall asleep only at dawn. The Empress' bedroom was dimmed with curtains to prevent the bright sunlight outside. The wet-haired Empress, who had just finished taking a bath, just sat in front of the mirror. The bedroom filled with the people, such as a maid who combed her hair down hundreds of times to dry it, a maid preparing a dress for the Empress today, and the maid cleaning up the bedding from asleep. However, the space was cramped and quiet. Occasionally, they could only hear the Empress' annoying sighs. Dozens of maids moved without making a single noise or footsteps, but no one was frowning. In front of the Empress, they knew they had to be careful, even breathing. After a while, the Empress' clothing was all over. The Empress laughed with satisfaction when he saw a beautiful woman sitting in the mirror that no one else could match. Go out, only you can stay. The Empress pointed to one of the maids who was organizing the underwear she had taken off. As if it were familiar, everyone walked out of the bedroom, bowing their backs politely. However, the complexion that stood upright from the servant turned pale. It was because she knew well why the Empress asked to see herself. You. It has already been 5 years since she had served the Empress right next to her, but the word she always called was you. The dark-haired maid, named Bella had her hair tightened even further. Yes, Empress, why is there no news? That it is. Bella's eyes trembled anxiously. I bought it with my hand as clearly ordered. What Empress Rubini told Bella was simple, to poison the food of second Prince Perez. No matter how much her mother came from, she was definitely the son of the Emperor. To poison the second prince, it was a work of anger, but the face of the Empress, who gave the order, was dry as if to pull out the wits that useless. Bella was so scared. I didn't want to do something terrible. However, she had no right to deny the empress' order. Bella's family, one of the many vassal families of the Angenes family, were poor nobles with one palm-sized manor in the western part of the empire. Bella, the eldest daughter of such a family, was dedicated to the empress by her father. By the way, her father commanded that she should have served the empress right next to her because she is the best looking and smarter among the brothers and sisters. There was also a saying that she should not think about returning to the estate again for anything else. Among the maids who attended the empress, the servant was in such a situation, and the lives and deaths of them and their family were all dependent on the words of the empress. If you disobey the empress' words to add poison to the food of the second prince, not only me but all of my family will die. So she closed her eyes and started poisoning. After the death of the second prince's mother, once awake, she took his food and brought it to the separate palace. It has been a few months already. However, the second prince has not yet died. If he lying on the bed every time you go, he must have the same poison, but why doesn't he die? Bella's face became sad. If the kid doesn't die, he dies. Innocent families die. Bella recalled the dull appearance of the skinny second prince. Such a child. If you die quickly, everyone would be comfortable. I'll add more poison next time. The empress glanced at Bella's trembling shoulders and said, Go, thank you. Bella's voice was light. It was a feeling of relief that she would never die, and that she had a chance again. Empress, who annoyedly looked at Bella, shook one hand. It meant to disappear in front of me. It was like chasing even annoying bugs, but Bella was just thrilled. As a habit, she laughed, stealing tears as she left the Empress' bedroom. That's good. It's really good. It wasn't she that was dying, but she was really fortunate that no one was concerned about it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Here is a report on the sales status of clothing stores. Clarivan handed me a stack of paper written in neat handwriting. And this is the result of a simple survey and the age distribution of customers you mentioned. The last time I asked Clarivan, it was an event where people who visited the clothing store were given a ribbon or button that would be attached to the clothes and decorated by asking for their understanding in advance of answering a simple questionnaire. Those who were regretful that they bought ready-to-wear clothes that were the same as others were willing to participate in whether they liked the small items that would be decorated with their liking. Definitely, there is an overwhelming number of female customers, and the age, most of them are in their 30s and 40s. I wonder if it's because women who originally made clothes at home prefer to buy ready-to-wear clothes. I think so. While I was thinking for a moment, Clarivan waited by the side. No, it is not quite. Even though I didn't say anything, he was looking forward to seeing what I would say from my glowing eyes, and I didn't know what to do. Yes, we are looking for a suitable spot in the same Hazlet market. What does my father say? Galyahan is in charge of the operation, so he is very busy. Well, if you've always read only books, you're going to be busy running a business that's so busy. It will take some time to adjust. I nodded and said to Clarivan, even if you are in a hurry, please pay attention to decorating the interior and exterior as luxurious as the main store. Because the price is cheap, you must avoid the image that the ready-made clothes are cheap. Yes, I understand. And if possible, I think it would be better to start with other types of clothes instead of the original women's clothes in time for opening the branch. You mean different kinds of clothes? This time, my grandfather matched the clothes of the Lombardi employees, and the sewing staff had experience of menswear. It took money to set up a new model and make prototypes, so I have to worry about anything I can worry about. Menswear with a relatively simple design and less embellishment can leave a lot of margin on the clothing store. But the main customer base is women. Would it be okay? Because the main customer base is women, I think menswear will work well, I said, tapping the report with my fingertips. Clarivan thought for a moment at my words, and then struck her knee. Ah, if you're a woman in her 30s and 40s, you'd also buy your spouse clothes. Right. Of course, my lady. Clarivan is so thrilled that he can't speak. It's probably the first time he has seen a smart Lombardi. I understand that heart, Clarivan. I reached out with a short arm and patted Clarivan's shoulder. Then he reached out the other hand. You must also give the order form. Oh, here you are. Clarivan put a stack of papers with all sorts of numbers in my hand. In fact, I had no intention of paying attention to the details of the money coming in and going out. There was only one item I was looking for in this complex order form. The margin ratio is significant. Yes, somehow I did a lot of trading through the top of Lombardi and the guild. Clarivan said proudly, it is natural. The most accurate measure of ability is how much a merchant who sells goods makes a profit. I turned over a couple of reports, and finally I found what I wanted. Also, as expected, there is a need for a little adjustment. Please raise the wages of weavers and tailors a little more. Yes? Then the clothing store's interest rate will decrease. I see, but these people are, after all, are Lombardi people, right? People who live on this Lombardi land, work for Lombardi and pay taxes to Lombardi. That's why it doesn't make much sense to save money for them and make more money. And if you raise your wages, the efficiency of your work will naturally increase. You will have to find more and more workers in the future. It goes without saying that it will be easy to save people at that time. Clarivan raised his glasses and nodded. Okay, from a macro point of view, it's a way to give up a little margin right now and instead strengthen Lombardy itself. After all, Caravan is quick to understand. Even if I didn't have to explain everything, he was reading the lines accurately. In a posture of studying again, I got up from the seat and walked to the nearby bookshelf, leaving Caravan scrutinizing the reports he wrote. I was worried that it would be full of books only for children because it was my library. Last time, he said, because I saw you reading people from the South, the books were rather tailored to the level of an adult. There were so many interesting books that could be useful to me right now, and while I was searching through them, I suddenly realized one thing and asked Clarivan, isn't it the day that Lombardi scholarship students will be gathering soon? Yes, 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 but how did you know that? How long? I call the Lombardi scholarship students who meet once every quarter as Lombardi kids. They are people from all walks of life who have grown up with Lombardi's patronage, or more precisely, sponsored by my grandfather. Clarivan is also one of them. There are nobles and commoners, but what they have in common is a strong sense of belonging and bonding as Lombardi scholars, and deep loyalty to my grandfather. Since the Lombardi kids are considered to be as powerful weapons as the family's fortune, these attended with the excuse of being present for my grandfather on the day they met. Where are you gathering this time? The location was decided here for the Lombardi mansion, but I received a message that the date may change. Okay? It's unusual. Since each of them has a key position, the date and location were usually set a few weeks ago. What happened to Grandpa? It all depends on my grandfather anyway, so I had to watch it. Then, will that person come too? She was small and could not erase the traces of her age, but at the same time she had a tremendous presence. It would be great if you opened your face in advance. I muttered as I recalled the gray-haired, middle-aged woman I had seen for a while in my previous life. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. After my in-depth class with Clarivan, I left my study. Not long ago, Gilio and Myron started taking swordsmanship classes. Shananette decided to exhaust the energy of the twins, which emanated enormous taste as the days passed. It would be a good choice as they were two people who had been going to the top when the tournament was held in their previous lives. Because the weather is nice, would you like to take a walk? In a little while, it's time for the twins' swordsmanship class to end. We slowly stepped in to go to Shananette together, and it was when we were on the path of a quiet road to the training center of the annex. Something flew and bumped into my face with a big sound. End of chapter 40.